Hey everyone, Rich Gasway here. Just a quick reminder that all of the SA Matters show episodes are now available on YouTube, in addition to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Google Play. Some of the guests I interview on their near-miss events have video clips that they want to share, and it just wasn't working out well to do it on an audio-only format like a podcast. So now all the episodes are available on YouTube. Before I kick off this episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the live virtual training that is now available. How does it work? For those agencies that may not be able to afford to host a live classroom event, I'll come to your organization via the internet and train all of your team members on situational awareness and high-risk decision-making processes. It's sort of like a webinar, but it's live, real-time. We actually talk back and forth just like we're in a classroom. And if someone can't make it to the training, no problem. I'll provide you with a playback of the session that's good for 30 days. For less than $1,000, you can train your entire team, everyone, on situational awareness. Virtual training is truly the easiest and most affordable way to train your team on this important topic. If you want to learn more about live virtual training, visit the samatters.com website and click on the orange box on the right side of the homepage labeled Virtual Training Programs. If you want to talk to me about how you can incorporate this into your training schedule, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage and I'll give you a call. Okay, that's enough announcements. Roll that SA Matters show intro. Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Fire Chief William Ball from the Williamsport Fire and EMS, and you're listening to SA Matters Radio with Dr. Richard Gasaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hey everyone, welcome. Episode 219 of the Situational Awareness Matters Show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to help individuals and teams improve situational awareness and decision-making while they're working in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. From the beginning, the SA Matters mission has been simply this: to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. The message of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making has been shared at conferences and events for individual organizations as well for over 13 years now. And we've trained over 66,000 students, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, medical professionals, business leaders, utility workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. This message truly is for anyone who works in a high-risk, high-stress environment. I'm dedicated to improving your safety and your survival, and I'm here to offer you a message of hope and a message of inspiration and to help you accomplish the most important goal of all, and that's to go home to the ones who love you. And speaking of sharing the message, I'm coming to you today from my office in St. Paul, Minnesota, having just returned for presenting at Fire Rescue Med Conference in Henderson, Nevada. That was my first time presenting for Fire Rescue Med, and I appreciate the opportunity to have made some new friends and to share the message of situational awareness and high-risk decision-making with EMS professionals. Okay, today's feature segment is a continuation of a series of flashback episodes that I'm running from the early days of the show. When I first launched the show back in May of 2014, I had some amazing guests who shared some amazing near-miss stories. The problem is, the show was new, really new, and it hadn't yet gained much in the way of followership. Well, at least not the followership that we have today. So I want to give those who were not with us back then the opportunity to learn from some of those stories. And today is going to be part one of an interview with John Lightly. And what a story it is. John was alone inside of a working residential dwelling fire when things went bad, really fast. And John was about 3 steps from death's door. But before I start into the interview with John, let me take just a moment to mention the supervisor development training that I created. Some of you who know me well know my second passion after situational awareness is developing the leadership skills of supervisors, something I didn't do a very good job of when I was the boss. I was guilty of promoting supervisors before they were prepared to lead others, and that was my fault. And then I got frustrated with them when they didn't do a good job leading their team, or they didn't know how to appropriately resolve personnel issues. And that was my fault too. So I created a supervisor development training program that can be customized to run anywhere from 2 days to 5 days. And no matter the length of the program, no PowerPoint. Did you catch that? No PowerPoint. Can you imagine a week-long class that doesn't use PowerPoint? Is that even possible? Not only is it possible, but it's a better way to learn the skills of good leadership. When adults are engaged in the process of learning and not just being lectured to, learning can be fun. And the most important part, the lessons stick. In this program, we share practical, actionable best practices for leadership, problem solving, conflict resolution, teamwork, communications, motivation, accountability, generational leadership, discipline, coaching for performance improvement, and more. If you want to learn more about this program on how to teach your supervisors to lead in a different and better way toward successful outcomes and to hold those accountable, contact me. One of the questions I get asked a lot by the readers of my blog and the listeners and viewers of this show are, when are you coming to my area, or where are you going to be next? Great questions, and I've made it really easy to find out the answer. There's a link on the homepage of the SA Matters website of all the upcoming events. Just click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Live Training Dates. All right, in today's feature segment, it's part one of a 2-part interview with Captain John Lightly. At the time of the recording of this episode, John had served as a member of the Youngstown, Ohio Fire Department for 13 years. Youngstown Fire Department has 8 stations and a sworn strength of 135 firefighters. John is married and has twin daughters, so you can imagine how exciting and hectic John's life is. I really appreciate the time that he took to sit down with me and share his near-miss survival story, where he almost died as a result of being caught in a flashover. For reasons that will become obvious during the interview, I originally titled this episode 3 Feet from Death and dedicated it to all the firefighters who've been caught in a flashover and didn't live to tell their story. On October 8, 2009, at 3:06 in the morning, the Youngstown, Ohio Fire Department was dispatched for a fire that would prove to be nearly fatal for then Lieutenant Acting Captain John Lightly. Listen in as John shares his powerful lessons that chronicle how he ended up alone in a single-family residential dwelling conducting a primary search for victims. The interview will be audio only because back when I originally recorded this show, they were all audio files, no video files yet, sorry. Okay, let's listen in to my interview with Captain John Lightly. For reasons that will become obvious during the interview, I titled this episode 3 Feet from Death and dedicate it to all firefighters who've been caught in a flashover and did not live to tell their story. In this episode, you will learn how John conducted his size-up and made a determination based on the clues and the cues that formed his situational awareness that there was a high probability that this house was occupied. How the flashover occurred within 2 minutes of entry, a recurring theme that I'm seeing among flashover casualty incidents. How communications challenges influenced their understanding among the crew members. How John experienced tachypsychia, or slowing down of time when the flashover occurred. You'll listen to John describe how he felt intuition in the form of a sick feeling in his gut, and then later as a feeling that someone had punched him in the stomach. John will also talk about self-speak, the neurological phenomena where we talk to ourselves during our high-consequence situations. Only John didn't call it self-speak, and I'll let him explain what he called it and why he called it what he did. You'll learn how John's entry the first 2 times were under the premise of assuming the risk of being a firefighter, yet he admits that his entry the 3rd time, he actually was creating risk, not assuming risk. So let's join in on my interview with Youngstown, Ohio Fire Captain John Lightly, a close call survivor caught in a flashover at a residential dwelling fire. Now, a little note here before we get stuck into the interview. When I was going through and doing the editing for this interview, I realized it was almost 2 hours long. So I cut this interview into 2 parts. So this interview with Captain Lightly will be episodes 22 and 23. So you'll want to tune in for both of them. All right, let's get back to our interview.
Thank you, Dr. Gasway. Appreciate your website, your teaching, your preaching that the situation awareness is key. It's a lifesaver. That was definitely the reason that I came out of my situation in one piece. I realized that the situation was getting worse. If I had not been aware of my surroundings, I definitely would not be here doing this interview for you.
Well, thank you for that.
I appreciate what you've done and keep going with all that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That makes me feel good, and it inspires me to want to work harder for you and for everyone else. So let's just start on the day that it happened. You can even go back, even before the call came in, what kind of day you were having, busy day. I know you told me before that we started recording, guys do like 400 structure fires, maybe rivaled second to Gary, Indiana for the number of fires that you see. What kind of day were you having? Did you have your regular staffing on duty? And then just tell me about as the call came in, if you were first in, second in, and just tell the story.
Absolutely. In our department, lieutenant is the engineer, driver, operator, and then when the captain is off, the lieutenant bumps up and rides the seat, as we call it, acting captain. So I was acting captain that day. It was a good day because we actually had a total of 4 guys on the truck. Myself, 1 acting lieutenant, and 2 firefighters. Generally, for us, there's only 3 on the trucks, on the pumps. My station is in the heart of our south side. We share quarters with a ladder company and a battalion chief. Normal day, couple false alarms here and there, just general stuff. Good day with the guys. Went to bed just like normal. Figured we'd probably get something during the night because that's certainly our busiest time. And it was probably about 4:30 in the morning when the bell hit. And as soon as they said the street, we knew that we'd be first in. We're very proud of our company. We fight a lot of fire. And of course, we always want to be first in. Rolled on the call, doing our normal thing, getting ready as we went. Calm conversation in the cab, making sure our driver knew exactly which turn. We followed the battalion chief, as is our custom. The thing that was a little bit different is they said occupied structure fire. In the city of Youngstown, we have thousands of vacant homes, and those are usually the prime target of arsonists. I can say our city has averaged over the past number of years about 400 structure fires a year. I'd been on for 8 or 9 years at the time, so I'd been to hundreds of fires. Everybody in that truck that day was a seasoned guy. I'd fought fire with all of them, never had any problems. And having that fourth guy definitely made me feel more capable, like we could accomplish more, because I knew our hose line would get stretched faster. I knew that we'd have extra help inside, we'd have extra eyes and ears, which was good because going to the report of the occupied, you're at that time of the day, chances are more than likely somebody is still inside. So that always heightens your sensations. We turned the corner, and up ahead we could see two Youngstown police cars parked over in about the general area of where the house should be. And that's kind of a rarity for us. It's very rare that the YPD goes to structure fires with us because they're busy enough handling their own problems. It's not like a lot of places where there's always a police car marking the driveway or standing there to direct traffic or to give you a size up, as you come upon the scene. So that was one thing that was kind of out of the ordinary. And as we pulled up to a stop, the second thing that was out of the ordinary was I couldn't see the house. Most of our houses are the standard, maybe 50 feet or less from the curb to the front door. We pull 1 3/4 pre-connects. We have a 150-foot pre-connect and we have a 200-foot pre-connect. I know a lot of teaching out there talks about you should always estimate the stretch. You can't rely on pre-connects because that's how we do it every time. Well, there is a reason why I think that we do it every time is because 95% of the time, this line is the right one. So we were kind of shocked when we stopped in front of the house, which we knew was the house because there was a cop running down the driveway towards us, waving his arms. We could tell that it was further back, so I instantly called for the 200-foot pre-connect. I started down the driveway, long, narrow driveway, hedge on one side, and I'm headed towards a bunch of pine trees that went across the front yard. So that blocked the view. In the dark, it looked like the pine trees were closer than they actually were. I jogged maybe 150 feet or so until I got past the pine trees, and that was the first look I had at the house. I quickly realized that the 200-foot pre-connect was definitely the better choice. Your standard 1.5-story wood frame structures. The door was located on the 1/4 corner at the front of the house there. A partially attached garage on side 4. I say partially because it was basically attached with a covered walkway. Couple things that heightened my awareness about the fact, or concern, I should say, about the fact that it might be an occupied structure was the way the house looked. It didn't have the typical run-down, dilapidated, vacant look that a lot of our housing properties have. It had 2 cars in the driveway, one of which was a nicer car. It wasn't all beat up. It would be the style that if that house was vacant, that car wouldn't have been in the driveway very long. It would have been stolen, which sadly is normal for us. So seeing that there was a nicer car parked there led me more to believe that it was an occupied house. There was a dog chained to the corner of the garage. You don't see that on vacant houses. Standard yard furniture, a grill sitting by the garage. Again, if this had been vacant for any length of time, that grill would have been at somebody else's porch, not at this location. As I stood there and quickly took all these indicators, these clues into my mind, it definitely made me realize the high probability that this is an occupied house. And whether we like to admit it or not, I think when we're dealing with an occupied structure, we fight fire in one manner. When we're dealing with a vacant, we fight it in a different manner. There's the big debate going on about should you search if it's a vacant house, so forth. But we always definitely search when we know or certainly believe it to be occupied. And that, by very nature of firefighters, it makes us more aggressive. It makes us want to get in and get the job done faster. So plugging all of these into my my thought process, I realized that the situation was a little bit more intense than, if it was just a standard vacant home where we could, quickly go defensive if we needed to. So I think my situational awareness was allowing my tactics to be formed. I turned and looked. It's standard for our ladder company to start opening up a point of entry as we're stretching the line. I could see that being done. The ladder company, by the time I made it down to the house, the ladder company had pulled up behind us, and I could see them coming down the driveway with their various tools, and I knew, based on having had lots of fires with that ladder company, I knew where they were going to go. I knew what they were going to do. Typically, if one of our engine companies arrives before a battalion chief, that engine officer will do the 360. I did not do a 360 on this structure because the battalion chief arrived before us. He made it up to the house before I did, and he had started a 360. Part of the 360 for myself would have been blocked anyways because of the way the covered porch led from the house to the garage, and because of the dog. I wasn't going to take my chances on an unhappy dog deciding I shouldn't do a 360. But I was still okay with that because I trust that battalion chief. He and I had been to lots of fires together, myself as either a pump operator or as the acting captain, him in command. We had developed kind of that relationship where motions and looks conveyed a lot of communication. So I felt real comfortable with him.
Okay, John, let me ask you, did the battalion chief complete the 360?
The battalion chief did as much of the 360 as was possible due to the dog and the other obstruction of the way the covered walkway, the covered porch, ran from the house to the garage. A true 360, while it's definitely important, is obviously sometimes just not physically possible. The one benefit in this case was because we had smoke coming from the front of the house and just a little bit of the front portion of side 4, he didn't really need to 360 the rest of side 4, which was the garage. There was nothing coming from that corner that led to the garage. What he did was went around from side 1 to side 2 and made it to side 3 as far as possible. Mm-hmm. So again, he covered as much territory as was possible. Okay. He was just slowed down by the obstructions. Okay. But as he got ready to head around the corner, of side 1-2, I was kneeling down to go ahead and mask up. At that point, I had moderate smoke coming from the eaves along side 1, a little bit of the side 1-4 corner. Nothing much. Wasn't heavy, wasn't ugly black, was just normal. It didn't appear any different than the number of fires I'd been in before. Didn't see any flame whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
The side door or the main entry door was closed and locked, so there was nothing pushing around that door. Well, as he started to leave my sight or my viewpoint, he was talking to one of the police officers, and he turned and looked and hollered across the yard, maybe 30 feet or so. He says, "Hey, John, the cops came on a burglar alarm." Well, that finished off, the indicators to me that it was going to be an occupied structure, that we were definitely going to be looking for one or more persons, because they rolled on a burglar alarm. The cops are the ones that called in the fire department, saying that the structure was on fire. And it would be very rare in the city for someone to have their burglar alarm at that time of day and not be at home. Mm-hmm. So that just, all those pieces of the puzzle, my situational awareness was telling me, occupied, you need to get in, you need to push. This door is locked. That means they didn't come out after the fire started. Mm-hmm. So he then disappeared around the corner. One of the ladder guys came up and popped the side door for me. A real simple force, nothing involved there. And when he did, I was masked up. I was looking right inside into the living room. I could see clear to the back wall. The living room, I would estimate, would be your basic standard 12 by 12, 15 by 12. Not a huge, definitely not a McMansion type of home. I would guess the whole structure was maybe 1,200 square feet. Mm-hmm. So not a large place. There were 3 steps up into the structure, concrete steps, kind of like the type you would have on a side entrance of a trailer. Mm-hmm. Which that was a little bit different, and it ended up being very beneficial for me. A lot of our homes have 3 steps up to a covered front porch, and the distance from the top step to the front door is the width of the porch. It might be 10 to 12 feet, just your standard old mill construction type of homes. Mm-hmm. Well, this one only led up 3 concrete steps, and then there was a threshold. So I kneeled on the top step, just a little bit of light smoke coming out at the very top of the doorway, no heat, and I could see a small amount of flame over to my left, which would have been the 1-2 corner. I was entering the 1-4 corner. The small bit of flame would have been the 1-2 corner. It was down low, and my first thought was it would be electrical, because I could tell there it looked like a lamp sitting on a small table over in that corner. And as low as it was about the height of, your standard electrical outlet. So I'm thinking we just have a small electrical fire. It hasn't gotten taken off, or it hasn't taken off yet. This should be a pretty simple fire. We just got to do a search. So all this could have only taken a few seconds for me to make that quick determination and alert myself to the fire conditions. I turned and looked, and I saw my 2 guys had stretched the line, and they'd come up about 20 feet short. So what are the odds? It's very rare that our 200-foot pre-connect does not reach. It's extremely rare. I can only think of a handful of times in my career where we've had to extend past 200 feet. Notwithstanding, you're going onto the third or fourth floor of a, apartment complex or something. So I looked at that. I wasn't worried. I knew that the two firefighters and the pump operator had done this before, that they'd extend the hose line by a section. They'd be right behind me. I was calm. I think I was very relaxed. I think I was thinking clearly. But I was also thinking quickly, we need to get in right now and start searching for this. The fire is small. Time should be on your side. The risk was relatively low, and the reward was potentially high. And I mean, that's what the mantra that we're trying to preach to people. The risk a little, risk a lot scenario.
Yep.
This was a perfect example to go in, or a perfect reason to make entry without a charged hose line. We had high probability of a victim, and we had a very slow, small fire. I made entry by myself. I don't recall if I waved at one of my guys or communicated with one of my guys. Going forward in my career, I need to make sure that if I'm ever in a situation similar to that, that I definitely make them aware of my intentions. So that was a learning thing in hindsight for me. But again, I was comfortable going into this room alone. I could see to the back of the room. The living room is what it ended up being. I could see a couch right inside the door to my left, and extended into the center of the room. I could see a television set on my left, and dead straight ahead of me, I could see a bed. That's normal for us in our occupied houses. A lot of times a bed in the living room means an invalid. It means an elderly person with whatever chronic disease. They can't make it up the stairs anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So they put the hospital bed in the front room.
Right.
So my situational awareness kicked up another notch. I said, I might have a victim here.
Could you see the bed? Could you see if there was somebody on the bed at that point?
I could see the outline of the bed. I knew instantly that it was a bed. I could tell that there was bedding on top, but there was no way to see if there was anybody under the covers. And the bed was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 feet away from where the actual fire was. Okay. The bed ran along the side 2 wall.
Okay.
So I said, this is simple. I walked in. I didn't crouch. I didn't crawl. I stepped in. I could see the floor. We train, if you could see the floor, you should be at a minimum duck walking, but you're most likely capable of standing upright. You can't see your feet, you get down and crawl. If you step in and you feel heat, get down. I stepped in, I had no heat. I had, I would estimate the smoke layer was a foot to a foot and a half off the ceiling level. So if it's an 8-foot ceiling, it's down to 6.5 feet or so. I'm 5'10". My head was underneath the smoke layer. That creates confidence. It creates the thought that you can do what you need to do. I quickly crossed over to the bed, did a real quick, thorough search of the top of the bed, and I did a quick sweep underneath the bed. Couldn't sweep very well because of the standard junk that people keep under their beds. No body. I said, this is great. I turned, I glanced at the fire. It had gone from the level of about 2 feet off the floor and had traveled up, so it was now going from the floor to the ceiling, but still just in the corner. It had not begun to spread across the ceiling. It had not began to spread across the sidewalls. I looked at it with my fire behavior knowledge, and I said, yeah, I mean, we're in the growth stage, but it's a very small growth. It's not, it hasn't produced enough heat to start banking down yet. I said, we're good. I turned and I exited the structure. I was in the main travel path from the bed to the front door, a common place that we should be looking for victims. I passed the couch, and I didn't specifically search the couch, but I could see there was nobody sitting or laying on the couch. I said, this is good. I stepped out onto the top step to where I could see my guys in the front yard, and they were extending the hose line. I said, great. It looked like they'd be ready to go here in a matter of seconds. I turned to go back in and finish a primary of that living room. As I did, I'd only been outside the structure maybe 10 seconds. It's maybe been 20 seconds since I'd been over by the bed. As I stepped back in, I had to duck. I had to duck under the smoke layer, and I had to duck under the heat. And I thought, wow, that picked up pretty quick. I looked over at the corner that was on fire, and now it had spread from the 1-2 corner all the way across side 1 and all the way across side 2, but at the ceiling level. So I knew the fire had just picked up. But again, I'd seen this before. I wasn't too concerned. I knew my guys were coming. Visibility was still pretty decent. Nothing to worry about. I spent maybe 10 seconds finishing a primary of the room, primarily because I was still able to move quickly, still able to be in a crouched position. Visibility was still pretty good. I came back towards the door, and I noticed a small motorcycle. When you knocked the door in, it swung to the right, and sitting behind the door was a motorcycle. I'm not a motorcycle guy, but it was small, maybe like a 50 or a 100 cc like dirt bike type of motorcycle. Mm-hmm. And that's fairly common for us, you know. I've crawled into living rooms and run into engines. I've crawled in and found motorcycles. We had a house fire one night, and a crew found a horse. A small pony was in one of the downstairs rooms. And that didn't really surprise too many of us. That's just par for our course. So I looked at the bike, and I moved it to the side so that we'd have more access coming in the door. I noticed a gas can sitting next to the motorcycle. I should have had the thought process of gas fumes, traveling fire. I'd better pitch this out. So I was situationally aware of the gas can, but I didn't take the simple step of pitching that out into the front yard. So sometimes I think we can be very aware of our surroundings and just not make a good decision. Not that it necessarily was going to hurt me, but I could have taken a step to reduce a hazard. I stepped back out onto the steps, and I looked, and my guys still weren't finished with the hose stretch. By this time, another company had gotten there. They'd accomplished their arrival activities, and one of the guys was masking up in the driveway. I looked at him, and I said, are we going to do this or what? And he kind of looks over, and he says, I don't know what the problem is. So now I'm a little frustrated. I didn't know what the situation was. I could tell that the two guys were working hard on extending the hose line, but my thought was they should have had this done. What's taken so long? So I turned back into the house to, with, I feel, a good thought in mind. I had not investigated where the hallway was that led to the rest of the house. My thought process was, there's nobody in this front room. We're going to knock down the front room. Fire behavior and water application tells me that as soon as I knock down this fire, smoke's going to come down to the floor, visibility's going to be gone. I'm not going to know which way to move to find the hallway, which will lead to the bedrooms, the kitchen, the rest of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach my students, when you're at the front door, whether you're moving down a hallway, you got to get down low and look underneath that smoke layer, because you have one chance to potentially see a victim laying on the floor. You have one chance to see a bottom step. So if I go in and I knock down the fire, and I know that the stairs are going to be off to my right, and I'm going to estimate 10 or 12 feet, I knock down the fire. It doesn't matter if I can't see the stairs, because I can see them in my mind. That quick little image that I take.
Mm-hmm.
So I turn back into the house, and now I'm down on my knees. Because even though I've only been out of the structure, again, maybe 15 seconds, the smoke has pushed down to maybe 2 feet off the ground. The heat is pretty warm now. It wasn't, oh my goodness, I'm going to die heat, but it was definitely the type of heat that is going to make you think, and was going to be the level of heat that a couple of years later you're going to be talking, oh boy, that was a hot one. I am certainly not God's gift to firefighters, but through my time, I've developed a good tolerance of heat, which I think is good because it allows me to stay in function, but it's bad because it allows me to stay in function.
Yeah, let me ask you a question.
Certainly. Mm-hmm.
So from the time you made your first entry, conditions were really good. I mean, you could look around, you could see the little bit of
Absolutely.
flame in the corner, till the time now that the smoke is 2 feet off the floor. What's the total time that has passed? And I know time is kind of hard to track in your mind, but as you look back now, about how much time has passed in this incident to this point?
You're correct that it seemed like time was standing still.
Uh-huh.
But I truly feel that if I'm being very objective and thinking it out logically, it certainly wasn't any more than 2 minutes.
Okay.
It was probably in the area of a minute to a minute and a half from the time I first made entry.
Okay. Now let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
As the conditions turned that significantly advancing conditions in a minute and a half, were you thinking that this fire is going to it's going to outmaneuver you, it's going to get ahead of you, it's going to, you're not, if it's I don't want to put the thought in your mind, but I'm wondering, were you thinking, holy cow, look how this fire has grown this much in a minute and a half? Was that on your mind?
Absolutely. I was thinking, man, this thing is getting away from us. It's progressing quickly. And yet, I was still thinking that in terms of finding a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was realizing that it was starting to get ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
But that meant it was also getting ahead of our ability to reach any potential victims.
Right.
And I wanted to accomplish as much search and learning the layout of the structure as fast as possible, because the fire was taking off so fast. So yeah, I was fully aware of how quickly the fire was going. But even with all my fire behavior knowledge, even with consciously realizing the fire was taking off and getting ahead of us, I still was surprised, I think, by the speed of which it occurred. I mean, I've watched the UL videos, the NIST videos on flashover. We've seen all kinds of training stuff. I've lit training fires, and we've tracked, the speed and so forth. But even knowing all that, being aware of all that, it still caught me by surprise that just how quickly this was moving.
Thank you, John, for sharing your powerful story and allowing us to learn from you. By the completion of this episode, we're going to learn some really important takeaways that John shares about this flashover and the things that he experienced while he was in the arms of death. And I hope you'll come back next week and listen to part 2 of this amazing story. In case you missed last week's episode, it was the first of my flashback series where I'm revisiting some of my most popular episodes from the early days of the show. The flashback series will offer you some amazing near-miss stories, like last week's with Sean Dolan, and John's over the next 2 weeks. And speaking of sharing lessons of near-miss events, I have a favor to ask of you, the listeners and the viewers of this show. The primary reason I created this show from the beginning was to give a voice to those who experienced near-miss events. And I've had some amazing stories shared, which have been extremely educational. But I'd like to get more of those lessons shared with the listeners and the viewers. But I need your help. If you have experienced or witnessed a near-miss event and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, contact me by visiting the SA Matters website and click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage. Think about it for a moment. The lessons learned from your near-miss event could save someone else's life. That's really powerful. What a wonderful gift that would be. If you want to share your experience, just contact me. Okay, I want to share some feedback that I received from a flawed situational awareness program attendee. It says, I greatly enjoyed both your presentations and I have been speaking with my chief about it all morning long. I was wondering if you could send me a direct link or direct me to the video of the vertical ventilation of the residential fire that you showed in class. It ties so well into your presentation. Words cannot possibly describe the impact that you had on me during that presentation. Thank you again, Captain Kelly, Urban EMS Coordinator, Morehead City, North Carolina, Fire and EMS. Thank you, Kelly, for sharing that feedback with me. I really appreciate it. Okay, as I always do, I want to take a moment to thank the companies, organizations, agencies, and departments that have hosted situational awareness training for their team members. I do this to show my appreciation of those who put forth the effort to organize, advertise, and fund great training on this important topic. Recent tour stops included the iWomen's Conference in Tysons, Virginia, the New Brunswick Fire Chiefs Conference in Fredericton, New Brunswick, and Fire Rescue Med Conference in Henderson, Nevada. I'm taking a couple of weeks off now to celebrate my son's graduation from high school, and I'm going on my annual Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness trip. It'll be 8 days of fishing, canoeing, hiking, hammocking, and really just total decompression. And then when I get back, I'm hitting it hard. July 14 to 15, I'll be at the Ohio Fire Chiefs Conference in Columbus, Ohio. July 19 through 27 at the Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. August 3 and 4, Evansville Fire Department in Evansville, Indiana. August 9 and 10, Fire Rescue International, Dallas, Texas. August 11 and 12, Northwest Fire District, Houston, Texas. August 13 through 16, Missouri City Fire Department, Missouri City, Texas. August 17 and 18, League City Fire Department, League City, Texas. August 21 through 24, back at the Syncrude Oil Refinery in Fort McMurray, Alberta. If you're interested in seeing the locations of all the upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop events, just swing by the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right side of the homepage labeled Live Training Dates. The program schedule is always changing, so check back often. If you're interested in hosting a program, there are over 100 programs already scheduled for 2018 and about 24 for 2019. I do have a couple of dates left in the fall of 2018, so if you're interested in getting something in this year, contact me right away. If you're thinking 2019, now's the time to contact me because 2019 is going to fill up probably by the end of summer. All right. If you're inspired to learn more best practices for improving your situational awareness and high-risk decision-making, then consider connecting with me and becoming part of this mission. There are several ways you can do that. There are nearly 80,000 people connected with us through our newsletter membership, our podcast subscribers, our YouTube subscribers, and the followers on our social media feeds of Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. It is through these channels that we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. All right, let's start with the newsletter. It's completely free. The newsletter will come to you by email once a month, and it contains featured content from more than 400 articles on the SA Matters blog and the over 200 episodes of the SA Matters show, and over 300 videos on the SA Matters YouTube channel. And occasionally in the newsletter, I will offer the subscribers special discounts on books, videos, training, online academy, live events, and all those discounts are just exclusively for the newsletter subscribers. The newsletter truly is the best way for us to stay in touch with each other. Now, there are two ways you can subscribe to the newsletter. First, if you're located in the United States and you have a smartphone, you can text SA Matters to 22828. That's the letter S as in Sam, the letter A as in Adam, and the word matters, all together, one word, SA Matters to 22828. Be sure to watch your autocorrect on your phone because sometimes it'll try to change SA Matters to something else. If you do it right, you're going to get a text message back on your phone asking you to enter your email address. Once you do that, you're all signed up for the newsletter. It's that simple. Now, I know some of you don't have smartphones or you don't like to do the texting thing, or maybe you're just not based in the United States. In that case, swing by the SAMatters.com website and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says free membership. You can subscribe to this podcast show by searching for SA Matters Radio on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel by searching SA Matters TV, altogether one word, SA Matters TV, on YouTube. You can also follow the SA Matters page on Facebook. You can follow @RichGasaway on Twitter, or you can search for Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. Okay, finally, the SA Matters show and the SA Matters TV YouTube channel have been very blessed to enjoy over 800,000 downloads and views. That makes the SA Matters show and SA Matters TV officially the longest consecutive running, fastest growing, independently operated, safety-focused show on the internet. And I'm looking to add an additional sponsor. So if you know a company that might be interested in advertising their product or service on this show, have them contact me through the SA Matters website. Well, that's it. Episode 219 of the SA Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Captain John Lightley from the Youngstown Fire Department. Thank you to our awesome sponsor, Midwest Fire. Thank you to all the companies, agencies, and organizations that have hosted Situational Awareness Matters programs. Thank you to all the organizations that have hosted the live, virtual, internet-based training events. Thank you to the more than 2,000 students and graduates of the acclaimed Situational Awareness Matters online academy. But most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit SAMatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.